Hello and welcome to A Quest for Games. I'm Jerry, and in this video I'm going to do a how to play of the 2 to 8 player game Dungeon Kart by Brother Wise Games. Sorry it's taken so long to get this out. I did it once and had some technical difficulties, so here's a second attempt. Hopefully this one will work better. Dungeon Kart is, like I said, a 2 to 8 player game. I'm not sure if the 8 player part of that is that this is the Kickstarter, and you can see on the box cover, maybe you can't, that this is the gold edition of the Kickstarter. So I may have gotten some things. I know I got some pieces, and I'll talk about what those are that are not in the Kickstarter. I talked about a little bit of that during the unboxing. I'll try to talk a little bit more about that during the how to play. The basic game is you're driving around a track that you get to construct, and you're trying to be the first one across the finish line by avoiding all the hazards that are out there naturally on the board, staying on the track and not wrecking by running off the track, and avoiding your fellow drivers or kart racers so that they don't cause you problems and or try to cause problems to your opponent kart drivers to make it so that you win, you're the first one around the track. I will put on the Klingon channel so that if I've made any mistakes or people in the comments have told me about the mistakes that I've made, I can put the corrections into the Klingon channel so that as you're watching this, if you have the Klingon channel on, you should see the text that tells you there's a correction here. With that said, let's get this to the table and do the setup. Okay, let's start talking about setup. The first thing you'll really have to decide is what track do you want to use. There are a number of tracks in the racing guide that they tell you exactly how to set the track up, what tiles to use. Each one of the tiles have a number in the corner. This one is the starting tile and it's listed as 1A. The backside's 1B. I am going to use the basic starting track that they have in the booklet on game setup. So I will go and set that track up. It tells you in the booklet which pieces you need to go do that. So I have my track set up. I started with the starting line board. That's 1A. And this is like 11A and 10A. And I just went around and set them up according to the way it was shown in the book. I do have from the Kickstarter stuff, I do have these gold clips that I put on the edges of the board. I haven't figured out if these golden clips, if they work better on the inside or if they work better on the outside. The idea is, as you can see, I can shift this whole board as one piece, which has been really helpful. Several times we've played games and somebody's reaching across the table and they would slide that tile out and the whole board moves with them instead of just the one tile moving around. So that has been really good. There is comments on the Kickstarter about these tiles that say that you have to put them on a certain way to make sure that they don't mess up your boards. I do have spots where it's curled up, or you can see that there's marks on the edges of my board that they've been caused by these. So the jury's still out. The blessing is that the board stays together as one nice board, and some of the tracks that are not just an oval like this, it's more important even to have that. Anyway, the board set up. It's really not the first thing you're supposed to do according to the instructions, but it's the first thing we seem to do because there's some things about the driver cards and stuff, which will come next, that knowing what the track looks like is important to you. Maybe there is a reason for doing it the other way. I don't know. So the first thing they suggest you do is you figure out who's the first player and you give the first player token to whoever the first player is. I'm setting up for a 2-player game, so I have to deal out one more card than the number of players, so I have to deal out 3 cards. If I was setting up for a 4-player game, let's say, then I would be dealing out 5 cards. The first player gets to pick their driver first. We have Cleopatra, Kilza, and Gorgon. So I'm just going to pick because we're doing this. So the first player is taking Kilza, and the second player is taking Gorgana, and Cleopatra's going back into the box. So then we have to find the standees for these 2 players. And this player 1 would get that. They go into player 1's spot on the map in the starting spot. That goes in the second spot. So we've picked our drivers. First player got to pick the driver first. Then you go clockwise around the table. Then the last player who picked their driver gets to go pick a dashboard. So, and then player 1 picks their dashboard. At this point is when they say you're supposed to decide on the track, and you're supposed to build a track. You've set up your board. Then the next thing you do after you've set up the track is you'll take this black bag, which in the beginning, if it's the first time you've ever done anything with it, you'll have taken all the brown tokens that there are and put them into this bag, mix it up, and then you'll go around, and I'll show you a zoomed in spot of the board here in a minute, but you'll go around and you'll pick up a chip out of the board, out of the bag, and you'll put it on the board in the areas that have a red border around them. I just picked a hero, an epic hero, out of the bag. So I have to find the corresponding card for that epic hero and put it out. And that particular epic hero says, place a regular hero on every coin in the cleric's tile. If a racer hits the cleric, they wreck. And the regular heroes, if you hit a regular hero, you wreck too. So I have to find regular heroes, and you'll be able to tell a regular hero versus a epic hero. This one's an epic hero. They have a helmet on them. So I went through and put a regular hero on every single coin on this particular board. This hex is what they're saying by that card. So I've got regular heroes all around that. And I'm going to continue to go around the board and put out the hazard tokens. I just drew another epic hero. I have to replace every other hazard in the mages. So this is a sorcerer or mage. I have to replace every other one of the hazards on this board and put in a crystal object instead. So there's now a crystal hazard on that board. You just keep doing that. You go around and you put one of these brown tokens in every one of the red bordered spaces. I would have just put 2 epic heroes, so that showed me something else. I can't put 2 epic heroes on the same tile, same hex, so I have to take this one back and put something else out here. Oh, 2 boosts right at the end. And this epic hero is the Necromancer. So the Necromancer says I have to place a zombie on top of every item. I have my 3 epic heroes out so that everyone who's playing the game can see the 3 epic heroes that were placed on the board. I have to take the spell cards and sort them by the letter that's on the spell card and set them out in 3 piles, A, B, and C. You will want to shuffle these each time you race. Then because I'm doing a 2-player race, I have to get out this board. This one's good for 1 to 3, and it's actually good for, on the other side, it takes me up to 4. But I'll use the 1 to 3 board, and I'll put that down, and I'll put out the player tokens. Kilza is in first place right now, and Gorgana is in second place right now. Now I have to get all the zombie and bomb tokens out and put them out where they're within reach of all the players. that finished the setup. And I've zoomed into the board a little bit to help understand better how the game is played. I had said something about there's these squares, or the hexes that have the red border around them, and that I put in characters, hazards. This one happens to be, and I hope you can see that, that one happens to be a epic hero. That was the cleric epic hero, and the cleric epic heroes thing said that we were supposed to take and put on every gold coin spot, we had to put a normal hero. I am probably, for the sake of being able to teach some things, I'm going to remove some of these heroes. But that is the way this would be set up. You can see this one here is one of the crystals that came from, and they're off camera right now, but there is another epic hero back here that's in a spot, and that happened to be the sorcerer. And the sorcerer told us to put to replace all the hazards, so there's another one that's red, with a crystal. Before I actually talk about turn order, let's talk about some basics of the game. The idea of the game is you're going to have your dashboard, and you're going to have that dashboard set to some number, wherever it is. When you first start at the starting line, it's going to be down here at the beginning. At least that's what we've decided to do. We couldn't find a rule in the rule book that told us that it was supposed to be set to a certain place. So we've decided when you start out, it's just like as if you crashed. So your dashboard is set to that number. Let's say let's just say for now, my number is set to 4, and Killsa goes first. Killsa would go 1, 2, 3, and wreck into that hero. And that would cause them to wreck, which would make when they wreck, that makes their speedometer go all the way back down. They might have been at 4. It won't stay. They might have been at 4 when they started that movement of 4, but they crashed. So they have to go back down to 3. Since they hit that, they crashed. Now, let's say that the hero wasn't really there. The 1, 2, 3, 4 would have put them on a gold coin, and they would have gotten a gold coin out of the supply that they would have been able to put with their character. And those gold coins are used to have your special ability go off. So let's go ahead and talk about this dashboard. This dashboard happens to have top speed on the one side, and they have traction on the other side. Other dashboards will have like off-road on the one side and heavy on the other side. And what you'll see happens because of that is, if you look at this one, because this one has traction, it costs it 1 movement point to drift, which I'll show you what a drift is in a minute. This one costs you whatever it is in the tile that you're going into to drift. So to turn, both of these cost you 1 movement point. There is one that the turns are free. That's handling, I think. The move, it always costs you the movement points of the tile you're moving into. And then you'll see on this one, the bump costs this person 1 movement point and this person 0 movement points because they're a heavy. The movement points, you see the MP there, the movement points are wherever your shifter is. When you start at start, you're going to have the movement of 3, and you can shift up, which is part of your turn, and we'll get into that in a minute. So now I have a movement point of 4. I started my turn at a movement point of 4, and that's important to remember that I started my turn at a movement point of 4. But there's other things on this dashboard we got to look at. This one says dirt, grass, water, a spin out, mud, a wall, or a crash. Wall and a crash basically does the same thing. If I go across that terrain, when I start my movement at 4, if I crash, I have to go back 1. If I'm at movement point 4 and I drive through grass, nothing happens. But if I'm up here at movement points 11, which this guy's got top speed. If I have my movement points at 11 and I drive through grass, I still have 11 points to start out with. But once I drive through grass, I got to move my shifter back down to grass. And I'll show you some examples of that in a minute. A player card has its name on the top, and then it has two powers. Most of them have two powers. And what each one of the powers do is specified, or they tell you explicitly in the book and give you examples of what they do. This particular one for Gorgana, she can spend 2 gold and she can do one extra turn on her turn, or she can spend 3 gold, and if there's a racer straight in front of her, she can use her gaze and cause that racer to spin out. So spinning out on here makes this dashboard go back to 4. Let's talk through some examples of what could happen during your turn. So we're going to use this dashboard for Gorgana. She's going to go take her turn, even though she's supposed to be second. So let's say she's at 9, and I know she's at the starting line. She shouldn't have been at 9. That's okay. I'm just trying to teach. So she's at 9. She's on this dashboard, which, if you remember correctly, this dashboard says that a drift only costs 1 no matter where you drift into. So Gorgana can go 1, 2, 3, and she could drift here. Drifting is 1 square to this side or this side. 1 ahead, kind of. She could drift into here, it would only cost her 1, or she could drift into here, and it would also only cost her 1 because of the type of car she is. And now I forgot kind of where I was. The handy little thing they gave us called the ghost cart. I can put the ghost cart where she started, and now I can remember where I started at, and I can do the 1, 2, 3. Let's say she drifted over here for 4, 5, 6. Turn cost me 1, so 7, 8, 9. And I drove through a spell book, so I get to take a spell book and put it in my area. And we'll talk about what the spell books do later. She didn't drive through anything, so let's try that run again, and just to show some examples of things that can happen. Let's say she did a 1, 2, 3, and she went into here, so that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Turn is 9, and that would be the end of her turn. Well, she now landed on the spell book and rolled over a gold coin. So in that run, she would get both a spell book and a gold coin. And you can see she pretty much only wound up being 1 space behind. But on her dashboard, she started out with a 9, but now she went through grass. So she's got a downshift to 6 automatically. So her next turn, she'll start at 6. So let's talk about turn order, or what you do on your turn. So Kilza, we said that we're going to start on 3 because we're starting, just like as if it was after a crash. We're starting on 3. So the first thing Kilza can do is set their speed. So Kills is going to say, I'm going to go up 1 on my speed. And that allows Kilza to do 1, 2, 3, 4. He now ran over a gold coin, so Kilza's got a gold coin. Now we're supposed to look. He stayed on pavement the whole time, so I don't have to adjust his shifter because he stayed on pavement the whole time, so his turn would be completed. Gorgana takes her turn. She's going to also shift up to 4. She's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. Even though the space she's moving into would cost 2, that's okay. She can't move through it because she's only got 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. She can move into there, but she can't make it through because she would need 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to go through. She moved into grass. Doesn't matter because the grass is up here, so she's still okay. We don't have to change her shifter. She didn't run through any kind of money, so theoretically she might have been better off going 1, 2, 3, 4 with a side move, but this is what we said we were going to do. So you look at the shifter, and then you say that's the end of your turn. So let's really quickly, I'm going to quickly kind of contrive a couple of things in here. Let's say that we've done some more driving and we're sitting like this. They've both gone through spell books. So each one of the players has spell books now. You can't carry more than one spell or spell book in your area at a time. So if they had spell books before this, they wouldn't have been able to pick up another spell book. But because they just ran over that, they get the spell books. Now, how do we figure out what spell books they get? Well, one thing that happens at the end of a turn is you look to say who's closest to the edge of the board, edge of this hex, that is closest to where the finish line will be, right? So you got to go kind of all the way around to get back to the finish line. But Kilza is a half a space away. Gorgana is one space away. So that would put them on this chart. You would put Kilza in spot 1 and Gorgana in spot 2. So Kilza would turn in their spell book and get a spell. That spell happens to be, Kilza would just gain 2 coins when he turns it in. But he drew it from the A pile. Gorgana, she would take a B card because she's on the B spot. She would take a B spell card. I'll talk about what all the spell cards do and what kind of spell cards there are in just a minute. I was trying to get through how you figure out which kind of spell cards you get. There's some other things that we should talk about while we're in this area. Gorgana stopped there. She should have spun out because this hazard says if you stop next to the hazard, you spin out. If she was on 4, the spin out is on 4, so she would have been fine just sitting on 4, but she would have spun out. All right, so let's talk about, I'm going to set them up to do something else. Let's say that Gorgana had 4, and this is where the 2 racers are sitting. Gorgana could do 1, 2, 3 for the bump, and then 4, and she could bump Kilza either there or there. If bumping him here would have given him a gold coin, but put him in grass. So, but that's what you saw on the thing. The heavyweights can do that bump for free, and this is the heavy, so they can do that bump for free. If Kilza had that bump card, they would go 1, 2, bumped, didn't cost them anything, 3, 4, 3, 4. So that's the way, that's a bump. We talked about the drift. I showed you a turn, but a turn goes, you go one turn like this. You go you turn one side of the hex, either left or right, to make the turn. And that costs you 1 movement unless you have a special dashboard. So Gorgana actually has her special. If she happened to have 2 gold coins, she could actually turn twice and turn in the 2 gold coins. You have to use your power on your turn, or a spell card that you get has to be used on your turn. You can't use it on the opposing player's turn. So this came up in one race that we were in. Let's say that Gorgana was sitting here and Kilza came up and did a 1, 2, drift for 3. They're lined up in front of Gorgana. If Gorgana had 3 coins, you would think that she could spend the 3 coins and Kilza would spin out because of her power. But that's not the case. If Kilza ended their turn in these spots and Gorgana saw them and started her turn with that person there, Gorgana could have spent the 3 to cause this person to spin out. What the spin out would do to them is, I said they had, let's say they had 6. because that's what I used was 6. Well, the spin out would make them shift back down to 4. Each one of the cards are described in the book. I'm not going to go through what each driver does. Just know that they have spell pop. Each one of the drivers has things that they can do on their turn, and it costs them gold to do that. But they only can use their powers on their turn. So let's talk about some spell cards. Spell cards, this one you can tell from inside it, it says it's an A. It's an A card, right? In this particular case, it says you can place a bomb directly behind your car at the end of the round. If no driver has hit the bomb, then it blows up and wrecks anybody in any adjacent square around it. But you have to drop the bomb while you're driving. The zombie, on the other hand, says that you can place a zombie directly behind you. If a racer hits the zombie, they spin out as opposed to crash, which sets their speedometer to a different place, and it ends their turn in either case. But you also may discard the zombie in case of something like a fireball or a firebolt hits you. You can discard the zombie and not take the attack. It's like you're dragging the zombie behind you. This one's also one that can be used at any time during your turn, and you just gain 2 gold coins for it. Now, there are some that say, like this freeze. The freeze one says that, and you can see here at the bottom of the card, it says that this one can only be used at the start of a round before the first player goes. So you have to use this card then, and it says all carts in front of you crash. All racers besides you do not increase their speed dials at the beginning of their turn for this round. And you're supposed to take this ice cube and put it out, and it says no speed increases, so that everybody knows they're not supposed to increase their speed. This one, the rage one, it says right here at the bottom that you have to do it at the start of your turn. So it's the first thing you have to do at the start of your turn. You can gain 3 MP, ignoring all hazards, and train you crosses a road. Spin out any carts and destroy any hazards that you move through. You cannot wreck or spin out for the rest of this round. So there's a few things we still have to cover. There's things like this black square around here, that's a wall. It's going to cause you to wreck. Running into a hazard is going to cause you to wreck. The point I'm trying to get to is if you can't control your car well enough and you get yourself into a spot, which there are some spots on the board, that you're stuck and you're going to wreck. If you know you're in a spot where you think you might wreck next turn, one of the things that you can do is you can say, let's say I was at 10 and I ended there right next to that block. I could say, okay, I know I'm in trouble. My last movement point, instead of hitting the block, my last movement point, I am going to downshift 2. So you can do what they call a break, which it's not on these boards, and I'm kind of disappointed about that, but it's not on these boards, but it's in the instructions. You can spend a movement point to downshift 2. On this shifter, if I was at 10, I could spend 1 movement point to downshift to 2, which would take me down to 8. So that's a break. There are all kinds of hazards in the game, all kinds of hazard tiles. I'll let you look in the instruction booklet to understand what the different hazards do to you and what you have to do. The main thing that you need to remember is when everybody's taking their turn and you're at the end of the round, you have to check to see if people are by hazards and if any hazard would cause them a problem. So we talked about the end of the rounds, and you have to figure out, based on how close people are to the finish line, where their position is on here. So let's talk about the end of the game. And let's just say that Gorgana was at 9. She had her shifter on 9. And Kilza has his shifter on 6. So Gorgana has a 9. Kilza has it on 6. Player token is passed clockwise at the end of the round. I did miss that when I was talking about the end of the rounds. So let's just say that It's now Gorgana's the first player. So Gorgana has 9. She's going to step on the boost tile. That's one of hers. Rolls the boost and gets a 2. So 1, 2. So now she spent 1 for back here. Put the ghost here so you can remember. So she spent 1 to go to there. 2, 3, 4. She had 9, so she's got 5 left over. So Gorgana's got to remember that she has 5 left over. Kilza started with 6, steps on the boost tile, rolls, gets a 4. So that was 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1 was spent there. 2. So she started with 6. Or Kilza, he started with 6. So Kilza has 4 left over. Kilza has 4 movement points left over. Gorgana has 5 movement points left over. Gorgana won the race because she had 5 versus the 4. And that's how you handle ties if 2 people cross the finish line at the same time. So that's the rules for Dungeon Kart. Now my final thoughts. I've played the game quite a few times, and it's been fun, enjoyable. The build quality of everything is pretty good. I did talk about these shifters during my unboxing, and some of them still seem to have problems that they'll move on me without me trying to do anything. I have to keep constantly kind of pushing on these, so I have to figure out a solution to keep them from sliding because they just seem to go on their own at times. The acrylic racers are nice. They have nice graphics on them. They're a nice size. I have played with some people that have said, well, why aren't they minis, 3D mini models? I don't know. I think that would increase the cost of the game, probably, and I'm not sure that it's really worth it. Then I'd have to paint them, which, okay, I know a lot of people like painting their models, but I have an awful lot of models and I haven't painted most of them yet. So having this little graphic on there is really nice. So the cardboard is good on all the pieces. These spell books are cardboard's good. The cards are normal cardstock. They feel like they're good cards. They're the normal size, so you can sleeve them if you want to. The hex tiles are nice, sturdy cardboard. They're the same size, same thickness as a regular kind of main board from a board game. So if you got the Kickstarter, I got the gold version, but if you got the Kickstarter and you got the silver version comes with some tiles that have portals on them. They call them void, and you can run through the void portals, and it pops you out at another void portal that's the same letter and color in another spot. And then there's also some new terrain types on those tiles, but those new terrain types in the instructions that came with it tell you that, like the Meteor 1 is the same as grass. So you have to shift like you just drove through grass. They cost so much to go into, but it's clearly marked on the tile how many points it is to go into there. It also came with 2 more racers, and there's some track suggestions. Gold version came with ice terrain, so it's got snow and ice, and the snow also is treated the same as grass and costs 2 movement points to go across. Then there's the ice one. Ice one costs you 1 movement point to go into it. When you're on ice, there's some mechanics around how you slide, and you're going to wind up sliding on the ice. It also came with 2 drivers. So my rating, I've been using this new rating system 1 through 5. 1 being that I'm going to suggest it every time I can. That's kind of where this game is right now. 2 is if somebody else suggests it, I'm definitely going to play it. And this one's somewhere between a 1 and a 2. Then there's the 3, which is 4, which is it's a good game, but it's not for me. And then 5 is just it's not a good game. Well, this one's somewhere between a 1 and a 1.5. If I have the right audience, I definitely will suggest that we play it because with the right audiences, it's a good game. The game's not as complicated as other driving games that I've played, and in that regard, it's not as punishing if you have yourself and made some kind of mistake or you're not in the right speeds when you're trying to do things. The box says 10 and up, but I've played it with 6 and 8-year-olds, and it's fine. That's it for my final thoughts on Dungeon Kart. If you've stuck with me this long, thank you. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe. I would appreciate that. Bye, and I'll see you next time.